Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Kim Davis. I had a little technical challenge there for a moment. Welcome to Chalk Talk. Super excited to have you with me today. If you are a Houstonian or a fan of Houston sports, or I don't know, you just like good football, you're probably in a pretty good mood this week. We have some exciting things to talk about related to these Houston Texans and the fact that they are the AFC South champions and all set to host a playoff game on Saturday. Let me start this one as well. Hang on a second. And so I'm glad that you're with me. I'm actually adding a little something to the show. I did this the first week where I was able to also add my audience from Instagram, and I'm trying to make sure that I can add them in today, and we'll see if they can if they're going to be able to join us. Also, one of the super cool things is that Brandon Scott of Sports Radio 610 is going to be joining us shortly. He is always one of my favorite guests, and it's apparently one of your favorite guests as well. So, and just like that, on cue, he's about to pop in. You guys have been asking for him, and I'm always super excited when he graces us, when he joins us, because he just adds so much to the show. And right now, we got some really cool things to talk about. So without further ado, here is Brandon Scott. Welcome to the show, my friend.
I love the intro. Thank you for having me. And I'm always honored to join the program. So thanks again for having me.
Well, I actually really like to have you on, but I actually do have people that follow the show weekly ask, hey, when are you going to have Brandon back? So I like you, but I kind of have to, they enjoy what you bring. And so I do as well. So Brandon, listen, we have been covering this Houston Texans team for a while. We've covered a lot of the teams in this market, but this Texans team has been one that we've covered, the good, bad, and the ugly. And it's exciting now to be covering the good. I mean, who would have thought this time year ago that we'd be talking about a playoff game for the AFC South champions? And oh, by the way, we're talking about the Houston Texans. Came sooner than I expected, even though I thought they were headed in the right direction. Good times over on Kirby.
Yeah, it's really good times, especially like you mentioned, when you think about where we've come from and what it's been like over the last couple of years, over the last 3 years around here. I mean, it's been kind of a nightmare. And to think that it could turn so quickly with one regime change, with one move at quarterback, one specific, drafting of a quarterback. And then honestly, a couple of moves around that made the team really solid. And then you also have to think about this, and I've thought about this for a while now throughout the NFL season. You're thinking about a year where there's not really a dominant team. We all agree that the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in the AFC, and they make a case for being the best team in the entire league. But there's not that dominant team the way it felt like when Kansas City was dominating, the way it felt like when the Patriots were dominating, the way it's felt at various points around, within the AFC itself, much less around the league. And so then you look at the NFC side, of course, and, you can't even get there without getting through the AFC. But there's San Francisco and there's a couple other teams there, Detroit and the Cowboys. But, it's just a bunch of teams. And so you combine what the Texans have done, a bunch of solid moves with the opportunity that the league has provided, and just not having a dominant team. And it's kind of a perfect storm for the Texans. So, yeah, it's absolutely good times around here.
So clearly quarterback is the key position. But I'm going to start with the best thing this team could have done in the offseason was get the coaching decision hire right. And that's DeMeco Ryans. And so I think he's the coach of the year. So whether he gets the award or not, he has come in and really changed. We hear the word culture a lot. Really is the culture, the mindset of the organization. And so people that were here before, the ones that are still on this team, because you have players here before him, have bought in. They believe, they respect him. They feel like he's got their back, but he also holds them accountable. And he's been the perfect fit for the people that you mentioned that have been brought in. A CJ Stroud. I mean, and one of probably the few people who actually really thought he was the guy you should get, right? He's the quarterback that you want. I liked him, and people like, man, but if you can get Bryce Young, well, you got CJ Stroud, and I thought he'd be really good. Had no idea he'd be this good this soon. It almost feels, Brandon, unfair to even call him a rookie at this point, although he is.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like we're all old enough now to remember when CJ Stroud was being drafted into the worst situation in the NFL. But that was before everybody knew what we all kind of suspected from knowing about DeMeco. You, of course, having covered DeMeco,
Yeah.
and all of us have followed him for a very long time, and so we were very familiar and optimistic about it. But it was hard to really know or to really quantify what DeMeco's impact was going to be early on, even if you felt as good about it as you and I did, and as a lot of us did throughout the community who are just familiar with this program and familiar with what DeMeco Ryans has brought to it in the past and what he's brought to basically every place that he's been. But there is something to be said for not just culture, but the validity of it. Like not just culture as a buzzword, but culture in
Yeah.
practice. And I would say this to reiterate what I've said about DeMeco from the beginning is credibility. He brought credibility from the beginning and stood on that and has been consistent and has been the same, whether they were losing, whether they were winning, whether it was a disappointing week, whether it was, a great week. Like he was very consistent and I think like appropriate within the moment. Like he showed the appropriate amount of frustration, but was never like rattled. Showed the appropriate amount of excitement, but never seemed like he was, too far up his own, And so it's one of those things where like this is the perfectly balanced guy, to lead a team that honestly, in an organization that honestly needed that sort of credibility and stability that DeMeco Ryans provides.
I'm going to play one clip, and I'm glad that you said that. It's a clip from the press conference of the media availability with DeMeco on yesterday. And one of the things that sticks out with me, and I asked him about it, is he's really, as you said, he's been consistent. He said really the same thing from when he got here, when he was hired, through OTAs, through training camp, and he's talked about really being focused and executing. And so I hear sometimes, our colleagues can get annoyed because it sounds like Coach B, and they want you to give him something else, but it's what he's put into practice. It's just like when you see CJ talking, he's always talking about his faith, and he's always giving credit to his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's just who he is, right? It's not it's not the I'm trying to. It's me being me, and I think after you've been around both of them for a while, and really a lot of the guys in this team and this organization, what you realize is people are being who they are. Here's DeMeco talking about really not letting the moment be too big for them because they're doing the same thing they've been doing all year. Here's him yesterday.
Right, when it comes to the focus and these, big moments that externally, right, they become big moments, and a lot of people there'll be more coverage, there'll be more camera, there'll be more people attentive to what we're doing, but our focus doesn't change. Our preparation doesn't change, and that's what allows you to be consistent. It allows you to go out and execute because, as I always say, when the ball is snapped, nobody cares who's covering it, how many interviews you've done, right? How many people are watching? No one cares. Truly, the only thing that matters when that ball is snapped is, are you executing? Are you playing relentless? Are you finishing the way we like to finish, right? And if you do that, then everything else takes care of itself. Then there'll probably be another big game coming. But it doesn't change. You don't change who you are because of the moment. Continue to be the same team that we've been. Continue to work, right, how we work. Just stay humble and continue to work, and we'll be lifted up if we do things the right way.
I think that's what's really cool about him, Brandon. I think you and I have talked about this. I remember the little, I don't want to say scandal, but right. Remember in the summer when he just wouldn't say, he would not name CJ as the starter yet. And man, there were some of them among us were so annoyed. Like, what is he doing? Why won't he just name it? And so he has been very clear about his process and the way he does things and why he does things the way he does, it doesn't mean he's inflexible, right? Because as we talked to him and gotten to know him as a head coach, one of the things he says that he's really learned from the coaches he's worked with, especially Shanahan, is about being a head coach requires you to be flexible. So it's not about being inflexible, but it's about being clear about doing things with the way that you have lined them out to do it. So he didn't name CJ until right before the season started, and it worked out, right? So when he talks about that process and their focus, and really, if you get ahead of yourself and you don't execute and you start worrying about interviews and all the other stuff, it won't really matter because then you'll be home on the sofa watching the game with the rest of us. I like that about him because that's not just coach speak. That really is what he believes.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for the process that they were trying to go through with CJ Stroud. I don't think it was ever a question, just to rehash that for a second, I don't think there was ever a question about whether CJ Stroud would be the starting quarterback. I think there was a process that they were trying to have him go through of earning it. He was drafted to be the starting quarterback at some point eventually, and we all know what they had in the quarterback room. Like, this is no disrespect, but let's be honest about it, Kim. Right? they had the other quarterbacks on the team are Davis Mills and Case Keenum. And so he was obviously going to always be the starting quarterback. They just wanted to put him through the process of actually earning it. Even if it seemed like it was just for show, they wanted to do it, at least handle it a certain way behind the scenes and not just anoint him immediately. And we talked about this also even before they drafted CJ, right? When they hired DeMeco, but the draft hadn't happened yet. And DeMeco Ryans talked about not wanting to put the pressure on the number 2 pick, whoever it was, whether it was a quarterback and we figured it would be, but whoever they picked at number 2, not wanting to put the weight of the franchise on that pick, at least immediately. And then he talked to us just yesterday about wanting to earn things, right? Like you usually, like you earn being picked number 2 overall based off of what you did in college. You earn the starting job based off of what you do once you get in the NFL. You earn the way we talk about CJ Stroud now based off of how he's played. So it's a process. All of it is a process, and DeMeco Ryans is just speaking to that.
He is just speaking to that. So before we get to talk about the matchup, because I definitely want to do that, one of the stories that came out yesterday is a report that I think some of us have talked about off the air. Some of the guys in the station have talked about it on the air, is the fact that this staff that DeMeco has put together, albeit young, and for some people, you watch the staff, you thought, well, who's this Slowick guy? He's never been a play caller. You got a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback, and you got this guy who's never called plays. Well, now this guy is being asked to there's inquiries about whether or not other teams can talk to him for their head coach openings. And so the first one came out yesterday, which is the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, I would like to see Bobby Slowick stay and be with this team for a minute, but I definitely would hate to see him go to the Panthers because I just think the organization's crap. And I think they're crazy. Their owner's nuts. But it says something about what this team has done, the staff that DeMeco has put together, that in year 1, right, with your rookie quarterback, that people are asking to talk to your offensive coordinator. There's probably going to be more of that, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't think it'll be a distraction because I think that Slowick and DeMeco, I think it would not be terribly surprising, right? I'm sure they've talked about all of this, and there's enough respect for the process and what's happening here that they're going to get through this year. But your thoughts about the fact that in year 1 of this for real rebuild, right? Worst to first, all things, maybe the rookie of the year, maybe the coach of the year, and now maybe your OC's getting poached.
Yeah, I think mostly it's a copycat league, to use another cliche. Everybody's trying to do the same. And honestly, in this regard, I don't blame them. I don't blame teams wanting to capture the success that they've seen league-wide and elsewhere and see if they can, tap into it a little bit and find a little bit of it of their own, and we're talking about teams that either have quarterbacks or need quarterbacks or about to draft one, and they're trying to figure out who is the offensive mind that's not already a head coach and is the next guy who could potentially be my head coach that I could pair with my young quarterback. And so it's a logical idea. I get it. I personally think that Bobby Slowick could benefit from doing the same thing that DeMeco Ryans did by, doing the interviews that he gets. Whoever asked the interview, he just take all of the interviews, because and you and I know this just is like beyond just just from a football standpoint, but from a business standpoint, you should keep your options open. You should always do that. And in this case, it's a chance to elevate his career. So he should obviously take any interview, just for the experience of it. And I think that speaks to all of the things that we've talked about already about culture and the type of people that you hire and all of those things, as to the reason why you would have somebody that other people would be interested in, like Bobby Slowick. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I always thought that this was kind of an underlying story if things went well, and they went far better than I think any of us thought they would. So all of that makes sense to me. I don't think it'll be a distraction either, because I think they all understand that as well, that this is a business. He should take the interviews. And if he feels like he's ready, he should do it, So it's one of those things where,
if that's the right fit, because one of the cool things is he can wait for a situation that's, maybe not, make sure that the organization is the right fit. I think it's interesting because we always talk about these trees in the National Football League. And I think the tree now that we talk about is a Shanahan tree, right? The one that has produced coaches that have success. For years, it was a Belichick tree. But then when we look back and we thought, okay, but who's won from there, right? And clearly the tree. And then prior to that, it was Walsh. And there's some who say, well, Kubiak was a part of this. And so it really is interesting to see what people's backgrounds are, what they learn and what they value and what really works. So it's going to be interesting. But I think what's most interesting to me right now is what happens on Saturday when they face off against the Browns for the second time in 3 or 4 weeks?
Yeah.
3-4 weeks.
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve. How you feeling? How you feeling about this game? I mean, obviously, somebody asked DeMeco yesterday, which is kind of funny, like, what's the big difference, having CJ? Really? He just said it always is a big difference, or whatever. He basically said when you have your starting quarterback, you're always better off. I mean, I guess he was like, is that what we're doing? But you've got CJ, but you've got some other guys that are banged up. But what are your thoughts about the opportunity for the Texans on Saturday? It's almost when you the odds makers. I think the line now is at about 2 points. The Browns are favored by 2, and I think they win it. I think the Texans. I think they can win this one. I think that obviously the defense is going to have to do a lot better, and Amari Cooper cannot become the offensive of the against them again.
Yeah, Kim, what is the difference between night and day, between up and down, between black and white, between hot and cold? I mean, that's the difference. Like if you can simplify it, I would say it's that big of a difference, to have CJ Stroud out there versus trying to piece it together with Case Keenum or with Davis Mills or any of their other options. So I'm very excited about just how different it's going to look with CJ Stroud. I don't know if that necessarily means that they're good enough or if it's going to translate into them beating the Browns, but I do like their chances, obviously, a whole lot better. Yeah. And I also like the fact that, not to get too in the weeds of football, but I do like the fact that they have seen him recently. And so
they've seen him, and they haven't seen CJ.
Right. And so this is also going to be a game about adjustments to what you've seen and what you did or didn't do well previously, but also having to adjust to what they haven't seen, which, like you mentioned, like we've mentioned, is CJ Stroud. So I'm really excited about that. And I think this is going to be a matchup of two obvious Coach of the Year candidates. We have spoken about DeMeco Ryans, and I think DeMeco Ryans is a worthy candidate and should be named Coach of the Year for if the turnaround alone. I know DeMeco doesn't want to be tied to the turnaround because he wasn't a part of the mess, but just the idea that they could, like we talked at the top of the show, or, when I first joined, that they could be in this position after what we've seen is pretty incredible. I think Cleveland was already expected to be a pretty decent team, but you do have to give Kevin Stefanski and just that team some credit for hanging in there and being able to win 11 games. Like, it's really impressive what they've done as well. So I think it's going to be a matchup of two really good coaches, and it's going to be a matchup of adjustments. But I do like the Texans' chances with CJ Stroud, with the Nico Collins that we saw on this past Saturday night. Dalton Schultz is a really good alternate option. We'll see who they get back, right? Like, that's still up in the air of what other guys they could also get back that could make this team a lot stronger than what we've seen. So I'm pretty optimistic about it. And, not to be the guy who's like, settling for mediocrity or whatever, but just to be in this position. Like, if on Sunday and Monday we're talking about a loss or we're talking about a disappointing performance, we'll break it down fairly. But big picture view, I have a hard time thinking that I'm not going to feel good about this situation going forward, really based off of what they did throughout the season, this past Saturday, and just being in this opportunity, being in this situation.
As they all say, you've got to be in it to have a shot to win it. And they've given themselves that, right? They've always believed in themselves inside that building. And, they've got a shot. And I think you're right. I mean, I wouldn't say, oh, yeah, they're going to wipe the turf up, with the Browns. I wouldn't say that. I think it should be a good game. But let me ask you this. In the first game, there was, of course, no CJ Stroud, which, of course, changes the dynamics of this team completely. They had other guys that were banged up, but there was criticism from some who watched the game about what Stefanski did against DeMeco from a coaching perspective, and that DeMeco did make great adjustments, right? There are many who thought he put Stingley, let him just follow Amari Cooper around. I understand why he didn't do that. It makes sense to me because, we have to remember not too far in the weeds on football, but when you talk about Stingley, who's been great, like he's been Pro Bowl great, but he's not really played that spot a whole lot in his whole career, and you don't just put somebody there. So you thought, if he plays on the left side, you play him there, and you have to get your safeties to be able to be a little. You need people to be in the right spots, right? So I'm not really bothered with that. But do you think that, I imagine that's some extra motivation for DeMeco from a game calling perspective defensively because of what they were able to do on the offense the last time they met?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I asked him about this yesterday about what what have they learned about their pass defense since then, or at least in the Colts game, which was pretty good. If there's anything that they've learned they can apply here, and maybe if there's something about tighter coverage or better communication or whatever it may be, better technique. And he did speak to it a little bit. I think that there is just something to, like, for me, honestly, Kim, in that game, like, I'm just tipping my cap to Amari Cooper. Go back and look at some of those catches that he made. They're like, well, I don't know what you're supposed to do about that. Like, there was a lot of those. Now, there were some communication breakdowns and all that. And I think you can be better. I think that's where it's going to come down to. If they're better in communication, I think they'll be better in pass coverage against this team. I think it's also true that they're going to make some plays, or that we have to concede that they are able to make plays based off of what we've seen.
Yeah.
And so that's where
they're able to make plays. Yeah.
And that's where the optimism comes from having CJ Stroud, because now you feel like you can fight fire with fire if it comes down to it. Like, you'd love to think that they're going to make this adjustment and going to go out there and have this tremendous defensive performance and just shut the Browns offense down. But that might not happen. And if it doesn't, I think you can at least lean on the idea that you, like I said, can fight fire with fire, and have CJ Stroud out there throwing the ball to Nico Collins, dumping it off to Dalton Schultz and Devin Singletary, and making things happen.
I think you're right. And, listen, give Joe Flacco credit. He's been really, really good. Tony says he's due for a dud. I don't know if he's due for a dud, but I'm like,
hopefully.
Come on now, Joe.
Hopefully.
Really? Is this what you're doing?
Yeah.
he also is playing with absolutely no pressure, right? He's playing with house money, right? Because they got you out of the carpool line, and you've come in and so I think one of the big keys for this Texans team is hopefully Grenard is back. We'll get a chance to see who's practicing this week, but they're going to have to get some pressure on Flacco. They cannot let him sit back in that pocket and cook. He's too good there. They've got to get some pressure on him up front. They got to put their hands on him, show him a little bit of love.
Yeah. Make him want to go back home. Make Flacco want to go back to the carpool line. Make him want to go back to being his kid's Uber driver, like how I say that I am. Wherever they want to go, I'm the one that's got to take them. So that's actually probably a better life than taking hits from Will Anderson and Jonathan Grenard, who I hope, right, Jonathan Grenard is able to go in this game. I was optimistic last week that he might be able to go, and clearly he wasn't able to. He didn't. So I'm really hopeful for Grenard. I mean, we're around this guy, right? Like, this is a guy that puts in the work, has the right attitude. We talk about culture, okay? We talk about being a tone setter and being an example and somebody like that. This is someone that they drafted a while ago, right? But this was a hit. Whoever you want to give the credit to, maybe Grenard himself. But this is a hit, and this is somebody who has performed for you and been, like I said, a culture setter as well for you over the last several years. And I think would be a huge piece if you could get back. You talk about getting pressure on Joe Flacco. You need your best pass rusher, your double-digit sack guy, Jonathan Grenard. And I like what the guys inside do as well. The fact that they haven't been healthy over the last couple of weeks. I think that they've shown some surprise depth in that area, but I agree with you. Overall, they've got to make it, at the very least, make it difficult on him, as difficult as possible. Again, even conceding that they are able to make some incredible plays.
Well, you're right, and if there's any way Grenard can go, he will. We know that about him and about his work ethic, and he's doing everything he can to get back on the field. Joe said no coup Joe this time around. Exactly. And Tony, the practice schedule is altered. They practice into actually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday's walkthrough day, Saturday's game. So it is altered because of the schedule. And he says Bernard is Bill O'Brien's only hit. You might be right about that.
A broke clock is right twice a day, right?
Twice a day. Tony, you mentioned somebody that I was going to bring up, a guy who's been kind of that unsung hero on defense, and that's Barnett from the Eagles. He's done the work that doesn't really show up in the stat sheet, but he's been a guy on defense that is really, I think, Brandon, been playing well and making a difference.
Yeah, Derek Barnett, Khalil Davis, the guys that they've had come and fill in at safety at various points. Amos, I know Desmond King had a penalty in the last game, but you can't deny the amount of plays that he's made. I say that to say, like, there are a lot of guys around, and I think I mentioned this earlier on, that there have been a lot of moves around the margins or along the margins, you might say, that have actually been pretty good, that have worked out for the Texans pretty well. And I think that Barnett is one of them. Is one of the. How about that? Who would think that somebody? Imagine this. Who would think that somebody who played for the Eagles would be gone from the Eagles, land with the Texans, and probably, arguably, rather be with the Texans than the Eagles? You know what I mean? Like how many months ago would you have said, "Oh, that's crazy"? Because
I don't know how many weeks ago, right?
Yeah. Not. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things can change. Because I bet you, I'll go ask him today if I get a chance. I bet you he'd much rather be here, and he's not just saying it because he is here. I bet you he'd much rather be here than there, getting to play this playoff game inside with on a home team that's on the come up versus a team that is unfortunately not having its best moments at the worst time.
A major slide right now. And they lost both their coordinators. Yeah. Their quarterback has not been healthy all year. I don't think Jalen Hurts has been really healthy this year. And they started out 10-1, and they lost 5 in a row or 5 of the last 6. I mean,
5 of the last 6.
they have to go play at Tampa Bay.
That's wild.
I mean, and people are saying, maybe Tampa wins that game. So it is it's when we talk about how it can change so quickly in this league, it goes back to when you think about what DeMeco says every week. It's about focus, it's about executing, it's about looking at what's right now. And if he believes that, we know he does, being able to keep his players focused on that. I saw CJ, who has been doing some national interviews for a while, but he did some things around the college football championship yesterday. He was on the ESPN show, and one of the guys said, Stephen A. Smith said there's no way that you guys beat Browns. There's no way a rookie quarterback beats Joe Flacco. And CJ's like, oh, okay. I mean, he's not he's confident. He's unapologetically confident, but he's also humble, right? He has that cool mix of like, I ain't scared now, right? But I am grateful for the moment and for being here. I'm not that guy, but I've earned it. Like, I've been through some things, and like he said, I'm built for this, and so I appreciate the way he carries himself and how he's able to dust himself off. One of the things that sticks out, and people talk about it, right? And I think maybe locally, because we see him all the time. It's like when you saw a guy like Akeem Olajuwon play, you kind of forget. I mean, I'm not comparing him to Akeem, right? But you forget about some of the great things they do. But he's got 5 interceptions on the year to what now? 23 touchdown passes or 24, whatever. He had 21 going to last week. So
it's the best, whatever it is, the best ratio.
It's the best in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not rookie, but it's the best of any quarterback in the league. Pretty special.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's impressive about when you talk about the confidence and versus the humility is just the way it comes across is just an overall self-awareness. It is a privilege to be in this position, but at the same time, he's earned it and honestly belongs. Clearly, he belongs here and knows it. Seems to have known it from the very beginning. And so I can appreciate that level of confidence. Like when you arrive at a place, we've been here, right? Where whatever profession it is, you arrive there and maybe in the beginning, there's some level of self-doubt, but you can't let anybody know it. You can't let it,
right.
You can't let it be shown if it exists. And maybe there's a little bit of self-doubt in the beginning, but then you get there and then you realize, oh, wait a minute. No, I belong here. I belong. And not only do I belong here, but I'm one of the best here, and that you start to carry yourself with that level of confidence that's probably different from when you first got there. So I think that's what happened. Like, he probably was already confident, and whatever doubt might have existed is gone because dude has been balling, So,
and what, Brandon? I don't even know. I don't even know if with him it was self-doubt, because I've heard him talk about those words, right? So he's had some of that, but he says something all the time that I've adopted, and he says pressure is a privilege. Yeah. And I love that he says, pressure is a privilege. And I mean, of course my adrenaline gets up. I've had, a little nervous, always felt confident about that I'm ready. And the way he prepares, I mean, I tell this story, something that Tank Bell shared earlier in the year. We were talking at his locker one day, and he said, he and CJ are become very close. And he said, asked him about some play that he made in college one day. And so Tank said, I asked him, man, how'd you see that? And he said, oh, I was, looking up, going through YouTube at your, I look at my players and look at their plays, and I saw this play you made. I mean, that's what he does. Like, he does that level of research on his own. Like, of course, he's in the playbook, he's doing those things, but then he's doing all the other stuff. He's a real student of the game, and it shows. And you heard Stoic in camp, and you heard DeMeco say in camp and early on that he doesn't make the same mistake twice, right? He makes a mistake, he figures it out, and you're not going to see him do that one again. So
Yeah,
Kevin
yeah. No,
says,
I
Kevin says they extend him now 6 years, 400 million, which includes 70 million signing bonus that equates to 55 million a year. That would make him the highest paid. Yeah, I'm sure that he would love that. The good thing about them, Kevin, and if they're smart, I imagine that they will extend before the rookie contract ends, right? Why play around with it? Things continue to go the way they're going. He is the future of this organization. He has changed the trajectory of the Texans. Him along with obviously DeMeco. It has been, talk about a great marriage. It just really has. And I'm going to say this because we talked about it. We talked about when we looked at this roster coming out of camp, Brandon, we were like, well, not really sure. They've got Nico, and we knew that, we'd seen Nico, and I thought a healthy Nico could be a number one receiver, right? That's been a key for him being the first time. But we didn't know, right, about all the other guys. Like, the wide receiver room may not be great, and not really sure. And Tank Dell, he's a little light. What can they expect? They don't have great pieces, and the offensive line is piecemealed and all those things. And so what I say is a lot of that is about your coach. That's when you have to credit your coach to make those pieces that looked a little jagged around the edges, kind of smooth out a little bit. Not quite like glass, but smooth out a little bit. Good morning, Charles and Kevin, Annette, Sylvia. Hey guys, Joe.
But to that point, Kim, though, I would also point out that they in the receiver room, and I don't know if we gave enough credit to this in the discussion, and we didn't know enough about Tank Dell at the time, probably, or just couldn't say so because he was a rookie. But obviously Nico's dealt with injury before this year. That's been an issue of him staying on the field. But the thing I don't think we talked about enough or gave enough credit for was the type of workers that they have in that receiver room. Like they've got a lot of interchangeable guys that they can use in a lot of different ways that do a lot of different things well. Like they don't probably have that top 5, top 10 receiver in the league necessarily, but they got a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. And that was apparent really early on. It was like, I don't know how good these guys are necessarily, but I know they got a lot of guys that they can line up in a lot of different places. And that is in and of itself advantageous. And if they can actually go out there and perform, now you're cooking with grease, right? Like, and so two things. Tank Dell, way better than I think most people realize, just in terms of getting open and catching the ball, right? The biggest thing, like you don't have to be 6'4", 210 pounds to get open and catch. It helps, to be that big, because that means that you're going to be open more often than not in a one-on-one situation. But if you're fast enough or sudden enough or precise enough and can catch the ball, it really does not matter what size you are. You can go out there and be effective and even be elite, as we saw Tank Dell be. So I don't think we gave that enough credit for what his potential could be. And then I think he was just better than everybody realized. And then Nico's progression / health, like I think he did a couple of things. He put in a lot of work to become a much more well-rounded receiver.
Durable and well-rounded.
Yes, both things. Exactly those two things. Durable and more well-rounded receiver. And you can see the work that he put in based off of what he's produced this year.
Do you think that Nico Collins at this point in the season, is he a guy that you would say is a top 10 receiver in this league? Are you willing to put him in that category?
I definitely think that I think he's somebody who has shown that he's capable of being that on any given night and on any given week, right? Like on any given Sunday, so to speak. He can be that level of receiver. He was basically that. Like, tell me what you go look at Saturday and tell me how I can argue with how I can tell you no. The issue is just that he hasn't done it for long enough over a long enough period of time. But then you could say the same thing about CJ as a rookie, right? So it's like, okay, so if you're going to give CJ this status of hey, he's a top quarterback in the league, then you got to start looking at Nico Collins as well and start saying, man, this dude might actually be a top receiver in the league. Like, it might be time to actually have that conversation and be willing to concede that. So, he keeps putting up some games like he has. It's gonna be hard for me to like argue, hey, no, let's see more. Like, we've seen a lot.
Do you think that and you make some great points. Tony says no more blocking for Tank Dell and treat him like Pickens. And so here's what I say about that. Man, it's football, right? Like you can I know because he's so little, you're small, but you can't really say, oh, hey, the little guy doesn't have to do this. I just think it's a part of the business, and it goes with the work. And I know you're kind of joking, Tony, but there was a lot of talk about that. He got injured.
Yeah, I'm with
unfortunate, but
I'm with Tony. I'm with
are
Tony,
you?
Kim. I am. No, look, I listen. I take your point of it's football and make the same point for not having him in there. We know it's football. It's football. It's part of the business. So I think there's a level of risk management that should be involved. I'm not saying that Tank Dell should never be in there blocking, and that because he's small, he's above doing parts of the job that are just part of the job that you can't avoid. I'm saying in certain downs and distances, I don't like it. Like Tank, to me, there's a marked difference between Tank Dell blocking on a run play from inside your own 5 versus inside the red zone, like near the goal line, where
Right.
there's
A goal line.
far less space for Tank Dell to actually operate and do anything and be much of a threat anyway. So but it's not something that I wanted to harp on because I don't think it was negligent in a way that they were like, well, we don't care if we get Tank Dell hurt. I think
Right.
that he was
Of
part
course.
part of the play, and he went out there and honestly, to his credit, he did his job. He went out there and threw a block out there and was in the end zone with Singletary, or was it whichever running back it was, Pierce or Singletary. He was in the end zone with the guy. And so I think it might have been Pierce.
I think it was Pierce.
Yeah, but either way, it's like it was. I agree, it was football. But to me, like, if I was the type of person who like was tasked with figuring out what's my personnel package for an obvious run play inside the 5-yard line, what players do I put out there? I probably don't have them out there.
He ain't one of them. Yeah,
Probably not.
Probably
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Tony makes a joke about George Pickens now.
But see, but no. Credit to Tank Dell for not being. See, I'm not for him being in the game in that moment. But let me say this:
right.
Credit to him for not being George Pickens. Okay, because Tank Dell will go out there and throw his body around, and that entire wide receiver room is like that. So credit to those guys for not being the other way.
We talked to Tank one day, and I think we talked to Bobby about this was early. This is before Tank got hurt and he was still playing, about how he how they all block and how Tank blocks. And so we were in the locker room talking to Tank, and somebody asked him about, and I don't know if he said, if the question was, Bobby never said he likes it, but I think he said he embraces it. Anyway, the question to Tank was, so, and Bobby said how much you like blocking. And so Tank was like, I like it. I mean, I do it, right? But now you're going too far. I'm going to do what it takes, right? Because it's all about the next guy. And you hear places say, oh, it's about the next guy. It's about my teammate, being a good teammate. But you see it in this organization. You really do see that kind of energy where it really is about, the next guy. We just got to win. And so whatever that looks like, whoever's got to eat for us to win, we're willing to do it. If you had to pick, B. Scott, a few things that are keys for the Texans winning this week, obviously, to me, it's obviously protecting C, keeping it right, and getting rid of the negative plays. Right? They just can't have the penalties like last week. They can't afford that. That's hard to overcome. And not giving the big plays. What else do you think are key for this Texans team to be successful on Saturday?
Oh, I think it's what we talked about earlier. Honestly, it's the adjustment. It is how do you, communicate. I used the term communication before,
Yeah.
And that's been kind of an under discussed, I think, issue with this team because of its health with the between the safeties, linebackers, and even the corners. Like everybody, really, that entire defense and this team has been ravaged by injuries. But I think
Yeah.
having guys in and out of key communication spots, and maybe some guys in key communication spots not performing as well as on top of that, I think that's been an issue for them. And I think it was an issue for them specifically against Cleveland, on top of the fact that Cleveland made some incredible plays. So I think communication is a word that I would use as a key. And then really, like, not to oversimplify, but what they did against Indianapolis, where they went for a 75-yard touchdown on the first play of the game,
Yeah.
60 air yard, 75-yard touchdown. Do that again.
Yeah.
Do stuff like
Right.
that. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I think that is really, they really have to challenge this really good Brown secondary, and I think, force the issue, because you're not gonna. Look. I hope they make the adjustment on defense, but I don't think they're gonna win the game on ball control.
No.
Kind of
No.
the approach that they took when CJ Stroud was out. Like, hey, let's try not to play from behind, and let's try to stay in the game, be in the game at the end of the game, and that sort of thing. That's not it. That was the approach with Case Keenum in the game, or if Davis Mills is in the game. But with CJ
Yeah.
Stroud in the game, I think it's just be as aggressive as, and I've criticized them for this, so I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. I've said that sometimes they can be I've said sometimes they can be a little bit greedy at times with the deep shots and not taking the easy money. I think they should be smart, but I think they should be
Right.
as aggressive as they are inclined to be. And they don't need me to tell them that. Like, this is what they are about. They like to throw it down the field. I think they should do that.
Well, you know what? And that's one of the areas when you ask CJ, we talked about this a few weeks ago, where he thinks he's grown the most. It's that. It's really, yeah. Um, taking those underneath, taking those underneath passes. Like, if that's what the defense is giving him, he's like, I need to take that sometime. And I've gotten better at recognizing those and not just going for. And I don't think he was reckless with it before, but you can see his growth because he is a rookie. I mean, and veterans grow. So he said, no, that's an area for me where I know that I've had some growth because, you can just, methodically march down the field. What when you see, like, in the game in Indianapolis where they are continuing to try to run without a lot of success, are you frustrated by that? Would you like to see Bobby try to throw more, or do you understand what it is he's doing?
Yeah, I would like less of it on the earlier downs.
Yeah.
I'd like to see what you could get in the passing game in the earlier downs, and if you create an advantageous down and distance situation, then yes, I do like running the ball. And no, like, I want to run the ball. Like, I want to throw it on first down and be in, like, 2nd and 2, and then run the
Right.
ball. You know what I mean? Like,
Instead of being in 3rd and 8.
yeah, and then trying to run it, or just really just being in a bad situation there, whatever you try to do. So you're just low percentage. So I'd like to see less of it in the earlier downs, but I do want them to run the ball, or to be able to run the ball. Like, I don't want to, just because the running game is not looking good, to, like, just abandon it and not address it. It's like, no. Throw the ball on earlier downs, but y'all need to be able to do that. Yeah, like, this is football. Like you said earlier about the Tank Dell injury, this is football.
Yeah. You
This
got to
is
run it.
this
Yeah.
is football, man. Like, you gotta run the football. It's at some point, like, you're gonna be in a situation where you need to run the football. That late game situation for the Colts themselves, like, the criticism of them was taking their best player off the field and not running the football. Now, they drew up a play where a guy was wide open and, just didn't make the play. They didn't make the play, but everybody's like, hey,
Mhm.
man, run the ball. You got a dude. You got Jonathan Taylor. Like, I know the Texans don't have Jonathan Taylor, but, like, there's an
Oof.
element of that to the game that I think has to exist. So I don't get frustrated with them running it. I get frustrated with them running it so early, so predictably, and running it on those early downs when it feels like those are kind of wasted downs at times, wasted plays.
So Tony just posted that Vrabel has been fired. Let me see.
Oh
I
wow!
see any of that? Oh
let me turn on.
wow! Yeah,
Let me turn on the machine. Do I have that?
that's interesting. Tony's always on it. Yep, I'm looking at the Ian Wright sources.
Oh,
Titans coach Mike
oh
Vrabel will not
wow!
return in 2024.
Oh no, the
Both
Titans.
sides will move on
The Titans.
after 6 seasons.
Yeah, no, the Titans have a statement.
Oh wow!
Amy Adams Strunk put out this statement 5 minutes ago. Earlier today, I spoke with Mike Vrabel and told him about my decision to make a change at head coach. I appreciate Mike's contributions to the Tennessee Titans, both on and off the field. We wish Mike, Jen, and the Vrabel family nothing but the best in the future. Wow, that's the Titans officially putting that out there 5 minutes ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was not. Look, there was chatter about that, and there was also talk about in the rumor mill about Mike Vrabel even wanting to go and coach the Patriots if they part ways with Bill Belichick. So who knows what this was really all about? But I don't think I was expecting it to be I don't think I was expecting him to kind of get fired or for it to at least appear that way from this statement. So I thought he did a pretty good job as coach.
I thought he did a pretty good job, and we appreciate what he did on Sunday and leading that team to the victory over Jacksonville.
That's right.
That might be the thing that did it for Amy Stroud. Amy, she made it be like, oh no.
You did a favor,
here, right?
You did a favor for the Texans, for the McNairs, for Houston. No way, you're out of here. I don't care. I don't care
that
you
lost to him both times this year.
I don't care that you wore a cowboy hat. I don't care that you wore a cowboy hat for my for my old coach. No, forget that.
Right. So Tony says he has a choice to be to the Pats or Ohio State. He will be coaching again. There's no doubt about that. I would be curious to see what happens and where he goes. But there's, we already saw, Rivera was fired. So the Commanders' job is open. We know that the Panthers' job is open. We know that Arthur Smith was fired in Atlanta. The Falcons' job is open. Now the Titans' job is open. So, I'll be curious to see the Raiders' job. I think they should job the interim coach, but we'll see. The Raiders do Raiders things. And we'll be talking, I'm sure, soon about what happened with Harbaugh. Is he going to stay in Michigan now that they won a championship, or is he going to go back to the NFL? It's just one of the things that makes talking about football so much fun, and it's always changing, Brandon.
Yeah, I'm thinking this through as we're talking about it and all the openings. Vrabel feels like a Raiders coach. I know that they just something about him feels like it would fit well with the Raiders. I don't know. The thing about Vrabel and where a lot of these teams are right now is most of the teams that need a coach also need to figure out their quarterback situation, or to fix their quarterback situation, either by drafting or fixing whatever quarterback or maximizing whatever quarterback they have. Chargers. And I don't know where Vrabel fits in that sort of trend of, hey, let's go get the next Mike McDaniel, Bobby Slowick, from the Kyle Shanahan tree. Do I want to go get the rugged defensive coach who's a culture setter? The Texans just did it. I know DeMeco Ryans is a lot more. His presentation is a lot more polished and so to speak. Then I guess Mike Vrabel is just kind of he literally just came out of the locker room.
He a little bit in your face. Yeah,
a little bit more in your face. But I'm curious to see where that fits into the trend of what's going on in this particular offseason. I think it made a lot of sense for the Texans, specifically because of the connection with DeMeco Ryans, and again the credibility and the understanding that everybody had about him. But where does Vrabel fit you know, in all of that. To me, the Raiders stick out as like a branding matchup. But I don't. But you know, they need to figure out quarterback too.
They do, I want them to. I want them to keep what they have. I mean, I don't want him to
Yes.
get the Raiders job.
Yes,
You
yeah,
know,
I'm with you there. Now, what does
but
it
he
say
does
about
feel like he, you know, he does
what
feel
does
like that's the organization if he were to go someplace.
what does it say about the world though that I've already conceded that man's not going to get that job? You know,
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
and I pray he does. I'm rooting for him. I think that you want to talk
Yeah,
about,
man,
or you want to talk about earning something?
earning it. Talking
Yeah,
about earning something, he has
yeah,
earned it, but we
yeah,
already know. I
yeah.
mean, the
I
fact
just
that
saw
Eric
Steve
Bieniemy
Wilkes.
has never gotten the job,
I
right?
just I just saw Steve Wilkes. I just saw Steve Wilkes do something similar with Carolina last year. Now he's got DeMeco's old job, and the guys that they hired instead of Steve Wilkes, they fired already.
Right. They fired
So
him already because they
I,
should have kept Steve Wilkes.
yeah, I saw that. I saw that in and whether they should have or should have not, it just goes to show you, like, you know, careful what you wish for. Maybe give a little bit more credit to what you have when you see it, when it's right there in front of you. You know, trust your eyes, that sort of thing. So
Grass is not always green. Okay, so before we get out of here, what is it? What's the main thing that's to do? What's acceptable, right, for them to hold Amari Cooper to? Like, you're not going to limit him, but he shouldn't get 200 plus yards. But what's an acceptable outing? You know, under 100 yards?
yeah,
100
I
yards? I mean,
I, I think if he's I think he's an acceptable. I think 100 yards is acceptable, but I need it to be like, if it could be no
70.
touchdowns.
No
How about
touchdowns. Okay.
you know what I mean? How about if it's 100 yards, no touchdowns, I can live with it. You know, but if it's 65 yards and two touchdowns, you know, like
Yeah, that's not
so
good.
I'm looking more at scoring than I am yardage. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that's that's what the Texans defense has been, right? That's what they ended up being in Indianapolis. Like, they give up some plays here and there, and they're going to give up some plays. But if they can keep
Yep.
them out of the end zone, which they've been
Yeah.
pretty decent at doing throughout the season, then I think they've got a chance. No touchdowns for Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean,
I'm sorry about that. That's the
that's
idea.
okay.
That's the ideal scenario.
Right. Tony makes a great point. Hopping back to Raiders, they've already fired New England rejects McDaniel and Ziegler. They won't hire Vrabel.
Yeah, I thought about that too. It's a good point.
Yeah, we'll see. And we can't forget about Njoku, right? He's the other receiver that's some talent, and that showed out a little bit when he
Hey,
faced the Texans. So those two guys, if you can kind of handcuff those guys, slow them
Kim,
down.
this goes back to my earlier point. Like, I don't love that matchup. I don't love it.
Yeah.
He's really good. So this kind of goes back to my earlier point. Like, obviously, you got to do your best to neutralize their best weapons. Okay, that goes without saying. But fighting fire with fire is going to be so key. Like, you know, for like, we've got to see your Njoku and raise you a Dalton Schultz, even if Dalton Schultz is not as good as Njoku. Like, he's got to be somewhere in the vicinity or that type of threat. You know, we see
Maybe you
your
got Robert Woods a little bit, right? Maybe you get something from Woods or Brown. Both would be great, but if you get one of those guys back,
yeah,
that'd be helpful.
absolutely. So I've said this with Tank Dell out. I need the ideal complement of receivers of Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and Noah Brown,
Yeah.
because we understand John Mechie, who was the second round pick, and Xavier Hutchinson does a lot of really good things, but after those three guys that I mentioned, those first three, Nico Collins, Robert Woods,
Yeah.
and Noah Brown, you get into the very inexperienced and unproven territory of your receiving core, and you're, to me, at that point, asking for a lot. And so I feel most comfortable, especially since Tank Dell's been out, when they have all three of those guys. So I need you to have those guys, but also I point to what DeMeco said. Kim. If it's got whatever, if it's just got to be Nico one day,
right?
hey, you know what I mean?
That's
If
what it
it's got
is.
to, and I am thankful for them and for their sake that they feel like they have somebody like that. You know, like if you just got somebody, and thank God he's healthy, but if you got somebody that you just need to lean on, you know, you've got your quarterback. Now you've got a weapon who, hey, if these other guys aren't getting done or aren't available, you know, thankfully this particular guy is available.
Brendan, Scott, always great to have you joining me. Before you get out of here, I do have to mention that Alperen Sengun of the Houston Rockets, although they lost last night in Miami, is the player of the week, Western Conference Player of the Week. The first time the Rockets have had a player to be named that since James Harden back in 2019. And Alpi is the youngest player at the age of 21. How impressed have you been with Alpi this year?
Oh man, I mean his play speaks for itself. I'm incredibly impressed, you know. And if you're not impressed, then you know that's
you
like
haven't
whoever.
watched him.
Yeah, you got whoever's not impressed either hasn't watched him or is not capable of being impressed. So I'm very impressed. Where I'm at though now is like what I'm trying to think through is what is now because Alperen Sengun has done enough now, has elevated himself to kind of be their franchise player. You know, they're the guy that they build around, and I didn't see that coming. And so I hadn't really considered that much until like recently, till this year. So now I'm trying to think through what does that exactly look like? Like you need more, you're going to need far more shooting if this guy is going to be the centerpiece.
Shooting. If he's
Far
gonna
more
be
shooting.
it,
Yeah, if this is going to be the centerpiece of your team, which again I did not see coming, but he's really good. You know, I'm impressed. I can you know credit where it's due. Get the kick and play.
Yeah.
You know, like because that's what this year was about, figuring out if you had one of those. You know, between Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green, guys that you drafted in the same draft, typically after their third year, after a guy's third year, you tend to want to know. You know about. You know, they've obviously have exercised their options, and these guys are going to be there for the length of their contract, unless you know something comes up, you know, they get moved or anything like that. But you know, who do you want to give a contract to? And right now, that looks like Alperen Sengun. Again, you know, credit to Alperen Sengun, man, because he's far exceeded my expectations of him. I'm thoroughly impressed. But now I'm just trying to think about like I see the Cam Whitmore comment. Hey, look, I am a Cam.
People love him, Tony, in the stadium. People love Cam Whitmore.
I just want anybody, when they say check the tape, go back and look at any of the coverage that we did on the H-Town Hoops podcast with myself and Adam Spillane. Anything that I talked about on Sports Radio 610, that I was a card-carrying Cam Whitmore fan. Now, I admit that my idea would have been a bad idea because I wanted the Rockets to draft Cam Whitmore with the fourth pick. You know, and they obviously drafted Thompson, which I'm cool with, but drafting him with the fourth pick would have been a horrible idea because he was available at 20. You know, so don't listen to me on draft advice. But I wanted them to do that for a reason because I liked him as a player.
I like him.
And I want him to continue to get minutes, and I'm curious to see where he fits into things or how he fits into things because I know he does fit into things. Just how it all is gonna end up working out.
Well, Brandon, we will do this again soon. Maybe we'll do something before game on Saturday. But see you over at practice. And as always, thank you for joining me. The audience thanks you. They love you, and it made me feel good because now I'm giving the people what they want. So that's always important.
Well, I'm gonna try to get my laptop fixed for the next time that we do this because I had to emergency reroute to the phone, and so we, you know, if that took away from the experience at all, those are my apologies.
We didn't really even notice it. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
It's just no, the experience was
Yeah.
still amazing. We appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate being here. It's always good. It's always good to me. So thank you for having me.
All right, I'll see you shortly. That's
All right.
Brandon
See you soon.
Scott of Sports Radio 610. Also, you can catch out his podcast when they talk about hoops. Him and Adam Spillane, good stuff, covering the Rockets. And of course, we would talk more about the Rockets, but there's just so much to talk about with the Houston Texans right now. So follow along. May do a special pregame show on Saturday. Get ready for this playoff game with your AFC South champion Houston Texans taking on the Cleveland Browns. So listen, make sure you go out and make it a great, great day. If you have not taken that COVID vaccine, I'm encouraging you to do that. It's kind of creeping up. Get your flu shot. Be healthy. This weather's crazy, 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 and we need you to be safe and healthy out there in these streets. And remember, do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. I will see you next Tuesday on Chalk and across all the platforms between now and then. Make it a great week. Peace, everybody.